Hello and welcome to FilmDirt. For this video I thought I would talk about The Omen, which is a classic horror film. It came out in 1976, directed by Richard Donner. This is probably the earliest horror film I can remember that actually really scared me when I was a child, and even today I'm not really liking how scary it is. But it's, like I said, it's just one of those really classic horrors from back in the day where all horror films seemed a little bit creepier than modern horror films are. You all know the story. This is about the coming of the Antichrist, the devil's son, to teach us all a lesson and bring us the end of our days. Now, the reason I love this horror film is a number of things. It's the fantastic acting from every member of the cast. Every role has been filled by such a great talent. There's no weak points at all to this film. When I revisited it recently, the only weakness I can see, and it's not really a weak point, is because of the age of the film and some of the effects don't hold up, and that's just the material things and nothing to do with the story, which is fantastic in itself. But even in those spots where the film is showing its age, you can really excuse it, and I guess films that are a product of their time period and are showing flaws, that just makes it even more scary for me because it's got that handmade feel that it hasn't seen a computer at all, and that's hard to believe it's even possible nowadays. So doing a little bit of research on the production of this film, I got the impression that Richard Donner was trying to make it a little bit vague as to what the actual omen is. Is the devil's son really coming, or is it really an omen? And is every bad incident here just a coincidence and can be excused? It could be a terrible accident. I don't think it's possible to even contemplate. The way Richard Donner directed the film and played the story out was to make it fairly obvious that some evil being is definitely on his way. And I think Richard Donner is playing with us, really. I think he's intentionally tried to tease us with the clear evil that's present here and just tried to shrug it off as being nothing. And what a talented filmmaker. I've enjoyed all of his films, especially this one. Now, if you're a religious person, or if you come from a religious family, tell me if you agree with my thoughts here, because I'm thinking the reason it is as scary as it is because it seemed to be coming from an already foretold biblical place. I mean, there's a lot of mentions of the Bible here and passages being read. It could almost be coming from the Bible. Now, I loosely read the Bible, mainly at school and with my family, and it does seem to be almost like the text that is already written and is played out here as being a part of that. And I believe the 666 number is just created for the film. But it just seems so real when you are aware of certain texts in the Bible mentioning things like the beast and the book of Revelation, and it gives it all such a significance. I remember back in the day speaking to some relatives of mine that I know do go to church and are religious, how you must see this film because it is true, it's all foretold and already written. And what a wonderful talking point you can have with people. And it's good to debate the deeper meanings of the story as well. So here we're dropped straight into the story with Robert Thorn, who's an American ambassador. He's now on his way to a hospital in Italy where his wife has sadly lost their child. And this building here, the hospital, I've actually been here. I've been in this very room. It's actually the media centre at Shepperton Studios. My other line of work as a publicist for many studios brought me here for a few days, and it really is as stunning throughout the building as it looks. I didn't even realise that they filmed The Omen here until someone mentioned it to me. I thought I knew The Omen really well, and as soon as it was mentioned, I remembered this scene and this room so vividly. So whilst revisiting this film, I'm kind of thinking how great this scene is, and it's a great introduction. It already puts you on edge, as it sure does to Robert Thorn as well, played brilliantly by Gregory Peck. And it made me wonder why they even bothered telling him that his child sadly passed and offered another child as a replacement adoption. I get the feeling they could have done that really without telling him. I mean, could you really tell that it's not your child when, well, I guess when things like blood tests come back later on, he'd be able to write it off and think of an excuse. So that's probably why they told him, but it just shows you how conniving they are to really think of everything and lay out the pathway for this child to grow up in politics and be properly supported with wealth and status. I'm just thinking about all these devil conspirators and Satanists that are aware of who the child is, all working together to provide for the child until adulthood. I mean, it's certainly really creepy that something like this, an evil cult, even exists. And there's quite a few here peppered throughout the film, isn't there? They've obviously got the few here in the hospital that are facilitating the birth and the transfer of the child to Robert Thorn. And then you've got the nanny, Mrs. Baylock, that will look after him while at home. And then in the sequels, you get an overview of how this is an even deeper problem, and there's greater numbers of them, both in his work and in their companies, and well, the way it's all explained I think is fantastic. And I'll get to the sequels next time. And the first death here is the nanny, who has to make way for evil Mrs. Baylock, who's played fantastically by Billie Whitelaw. She just comes across as so evil and really gives me the creeps. And I don't scare easy with movies, so just shows you how great of an actor she is. And what a shocking death as well, to be hanging yourself at a kid's party. I mean, it's played out here so shocking and absurd. And like all these kids here, I wouldn't be just staring at what's going on. I'd be running away screaming, I know that. And the next couple of scenes that involve the priest, played by Patrick Troughton, and all you Doctor Who fans will be very familiar with Patrick Troughton, who was the second Doctor. To me, he looks kind of like he would be a former devil conspirator that had seen the light and tried to right his ways, which is what is depicted here. And he's trying to get the message to Robert Thorn of what he's dealing with here and what he's been subjected to with the burden with having the Antichrist's child. He should have just got on with it and just explained it in plain English, but he's giving Bible phrases here about taking communion. Just get on with it, explain it to him, and that's not the most efficient way to get your point across and actually be taken seriously. And I guess he's got a lot of fear in him. His death in the church grounds is completely shocking. This is probably my favourite of the lot. So getting around to halfway through the film, we're starting to see Robert Thorn is getting a little bit agitated and kind of suspicious, maybe. I mean, he's dealing with a lot of odd things here, and he's got the priest chasing him, and suddenly an evil Rottweiler being kept in the house by the nanny. And about all these dogs you see throughout the film, I love some of the stories that came out in interviews from the crew that all said they weren't vicious at all. They were all gentle cutie pies from an animal agency that provides to film and TV. And instead of growling and being vicious, they all wanted free hugs from the crew, which is fantastic to think about that actually happening. Because Rottweilers, they do look quite hard, and they had trouble getting the right performance out of them, so all of the growling is very likely to be overlaid ADR. And what a fantastic story to come out of this film if you're a dog lover like me. And again, talking about the great acting here, Gregory Peck just sells the whole horror to us, doesn't he? His wife as well, played by Remick, with those big eyes staring out in horror, and Patrick Troughton as the priest, and Billie Whitelaw as the evil nanny. I mean, all the great acting is there, but they've also got a certain look about them, haven't they, where we can actually believe in their faces of what role they're trying to be here, and all fantastic casting. You can see where Richard Donner was coming from and what he wanted to put actually on the screen. Here we're being shown the horror as well as being told. And show not tell, the famous saying is. And then Bugenhagen's appearance at the end of the film, for me, just grounds everything, because he's the guy that just seems to know exactly what is happening, and he's prepared for this. He's got the daggers of Megiddo, and he explains how to extinguish the life, as he puts it, and the specific way it must be done. As we know, it never happened specifically, so that's how the Antichrist survived, and it has to be done as it is written. So how does he know this? It's good to just write it away as just being a known fact in such a way that the audience is definitely on board. And I love Gregory Peck's acting towards the end of the film, when it's no doubt now, it's no doubt what he's dealing with, and he's fully on board, and he's very aware of what's happening after the deaths of the photographer and then his own wife. Both fantastic deaths put to the screen, but I have one nitpick. I think the photographer's death, always looked a little bit dated, even way back. The dummy didn't look real. I mean, you could only get away with using dummies and fake blood, but the whole premise is great. And the story about using the red wine in the window to simulate more of the horror of seeing the blood splashed around more. Very well executed, so to speak, definitely. And how horrible is that? Right in the street as well. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? It's almost like Robert has to do something. He has to take matters into his own hands now. Everyone else around him is one by one being killed off. He can't involve the police. It's gone too far. He's going to be accused of being senile now. He has to kill his own adopted son. And to do that, he has to get past the nanny. The full horror is that not only is he having to take it into his own hands, that everyone else around him is set in place to stop him doing it. And I think the ending here is played out perfectly. He fails in killing the child, and not only is it to set up a sequel, but as its own story, it kind of tells you that the devil child will outlive you unless you do everything specifically to not only kill the physical body. That part is probably easy, but you have to kill the evil that is within. So I absolutely love this film. It's brilliantly directed, and the few little nitpicks and age spots are completely excusable. You can look beyond it and see the craft of what this film is. I'll give this 5 stars for sure. I'll get round to the 2 sequels in the next couple of weeks. This film was recommended to me by a couple of friends of mine who said I should really feature more horror films on this channel, and I will definitely be looking to bring you a lot more horror movie content, especially classic horror. So subscribe to this channel and join me again when those drop. And coming next will be Damien, Omen 2. I'm looking forward to revisiting that. It's been a while. So thanks again for joining me. It was good talking to you, and join me again soon. All the best. Take care.